Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the second webinar in our three-part AI webinar series. Today, we'll be joined by Patrick Murray, Head of Strategy at fellow Fulcrum IT Partners company Razor. In this session, we'll be covering innovating with AI, touching on different AI technology types and providing some ideas on how they can be applied to deliver measurable outcomes. The Q&A function is live, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the session, and we'll leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you have. This session is being recorded and it will be made available to you in the coming days. That's all from me. So Patrick, I'll hand over to you. You have the floor.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for that introduction. So yes, I'm here to talk about innovating with AI. I'm actually going to start this talk in a way that I've never started a talk before, and that is I'm going to disagree with the title that I've chosen for this. While I was doing some reading and some research in preparation, I came across a Gartner article or some research where I picked out this statistic that 75% of companies intend to increase their AI budget this year, which got me thinking about, we talk about pioneering the future, when actually this feels like very much the present. This doesn't feel like just looking, 5, 10, 20 years in the future, wondering how are we going to use AI and what are the possibilities. It's becoming more and more, how do we make sure we're making the most of this technology in the here and now, so we are both thriving and also keeping up with our competition and other people who are exploring this space. I think it's particularly significant at the minute in that I'm sure we can all relate to the fact that at the minute budgets are stretched, to say the least. So this means that there isn't a lot of room for, doing nice, fun science experiments. Increasing our budget into AI means the stuff that we're doing has to pay for itself. There's got to be value there. We can't be throwing money into a pit and hoping for the best. We've got to know, why are we doing this? What are the outcomes we're going to achieve? Is the way we're innovating leading to those outcomes? One thing I wasn't surprised about, though, with that statistic was that so many companies are interested in AI. This is partly down to the fact that now every business is a data business. It doesn't really matter what the industry is, it doesn't matter the size. Data is moving through every single part of the organization. It's moving through it, it's there, whether it's being collected, whether it's being used, or if it's not. But there's more and more opportunities to collect this, understand what's going on, and extract value from that data. And obviously AI is moving fast. So if there are companies that have managed to hold on through the sort of big data trends and all the other stuff we've been doing with data, AI now, if that doesn't convince them, AI surely will at this point. So what we're going to cover today, if you were around for Jamie's talk, you should have an idea of what AI is. But we'll talk a little bit more detail about how we can apply that. What are the levers that we can pull with AI, and what are the cool bits of technology that we can apply to our own challenges? We'll talk about the different types of innovation. Innovation isn't just limited to doing cool experiments. It's what are the other ways we can innovate with AI, and how is that accessible to us? We'll then talk a little bit throughout that about how do we make sure that we're doing the right projects while we're doing it, and how do we make sure we're always getting closer and closer to that value that we need to justify these things. So as Adam said, my name is Patrick Murray, Head of Strategy at Razor. I always like to put my LinkedIn QR code in these things. It's a lot less daunting in a webinar because there's nothing worse than standing in front of a room full of people and putting this up, especially at the end of a talk, and then nobody scans it. But I can't see anybody, so I can choose to believe that you're all sat there now and you've all decided me on LinkedIn, and we can all have some good conversations about AI after this. So if you weren't here for Jamie's talk before, he identified this definition of AI as software used by computers to mimic aspects of human intelligence. I think this is a pretty good definition. I think it's a broad definition. I think that's somewhat necessary in AI. Working in this space, I have not come across many technologies that have been more challenging to find an agreed definition of something. So I'll take it if this is the one. But let's go a little bit. Let's go one step further and understand maybe more of those specific technologies. I'm aware that we're in the run-in to lunchtime, so we're not going to go into the depths of adversarial neural networks and all the big techie stuff. I'd probably embarrass myself if I tried. But let's take that one step down and clear up some language and see what's possible. So at the heart of AI is machine learning. It's probably a term that you've come across before and heard. Machine learning sits somewhere between data science, somewhere between computer science. There's a little bit of ethics and philosophy sprinkled in there as well in some cases. But in a nutshell, it is the science of getting getting computers to act in a way without explicit instructions. So if you think of traditional development, traditional programming, it's all about instructions. But how do we empower machines with that level of what seems like reasoning to make their own decisions, uncover trends, see relationships, which as humans we don't do as well as machines. This helps us to get better insight into what's happened and what's happened in the past and understand it better, but then also move to that foresight. What might come next? What are the trends and how can that inform what I do in the future? How can machine learning help me do that? Now, imagine if in terms of marketing, you could apply this. It could be understanding your customers better. If you target them with specific deals, understanding the type of customer who react better, so you can target your effort more effectively. It could be feeding into product development, understanding how do people use my product, what are the trends, what are the different personas, how can I, and how can a computer help me pull these out. Use it in things like supply chain optimization. So predicting when is a certain product going to run out of stock. How can I distribute my storage better? If I want to build a new distribution center, where's the best place for me to put that? It's understanding, or it's helping us understand that kind of question. It can also go very, very big. We see constant advancements in things like the medical field. Imagine going to a doctor and it's not just being treated on the symptoms you're showing that day. It's your whole, it's your overall health. It's the way you eat. It's, how's your heart rate been the last 2 weeks? People similar to you who do similar activities, what kind of issues do they face, and how can we use that to be more proactive in the way that you're treated? I would guess that everyone on this call encounters machine learning every single day, whether you're going on Amazon and they're recommending you a new book or a new product, all the way to things like Netflix. Whenever you go on Netflix, you're not just being recommended films based on a machine learning algorithm. Netflix goes as far as recommending a thumbnail based on the type of things that you and people similar to you like to react with. Now, I hear you all cry, that's just statistics, that's boring, that's just maths. Where's the cool stuff? For me, that all starts with natural language processing. Now, as well as uncovering trends and patterns and relationships better than humans, AI is now enabling computers to do the things that humans were previously better at than computers. This might be understanding language, unlocking unstructured data sources that we wouldn't have had before, whether it's through documents. And it's not just picking out the right words, it's actually understanding the sentiment, understanding the meaning of what people are saying. This could be looking across, 1,000 reviews for a certain product and understanding what are people talking about? What do they really mean? When we made that change, how did what people say about us on social media change? Taking those, what were previously data points that would have required a lot of human intervention and enabling computers to help us with that. It might also be an escalation path with a chatbot, understanding when is someone getting irritable with us and how can we ensure that they're talking to the right person and we're triaging them in the correct way. Another kind of building on that unstructured data is also images, videos. This could be image classification, as in this example, taking pictures of blueberry muffins and chihuahuas and being able to understand which is which. It could be object detection in an image or video. Think of this in a retail perspective. It could be looking at shelves around a supermarket, both analysing when something's going out of stock, but also collecting that data for more long-term forecasting, planning a warehouse and delivery centre better, and planning how to use people's time better. In that same retail setting, you could have a whole facial recognition piece. It could be understanding when someone that we know might be a well-known shoplifter comes in, and we need to inform security or to sort of keep an eye on them. But at the same time, if someone's coming in and exhibiting behavior, we don't know them, but they're exhibiting behavior we know to be suspicious, computer vision might come in to be able to flag that as well. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. One of the areas that we do a lot of this with at Razor is around in the manufacturing space. So we do a lot of work with manufacturers with our informatics platform, which is all about extracting data from factories, from shop floors, and being able to recommend and uncover where things like bottlenecks are, where you need to apply more, there needs to be more capacity to run through. Now, a challenge that we often face on a shop floor is that for every 10 state-of-the-art CNC machines with computers on that you can pull all the data that you like out of, there is a bunch of manual processes in between all those. So if you want to take that truly holistic view of a shop floor, you can't really do it without being able to extract that other data as well. How many widgets are being screwed together? And then of those widgets that were screwed together, how many actually pass our quality standards? These are questions that computer vision can help us answer. Now, again, with this is probably another one that you've probably encountered more than you're aware of. I think we've all, if you're using Google and going through your prove I'm a human, the prove I'm a human steps, and you're clicking select all the squares with a lamppost in, or a motorbike or a car, that is you labeling data in order to train a computer vision model for Google. Ironically, you're training a robot to be able to overcome the challenge to prove you're not a robot, and all the other good stuff I'm sure Google are planning with that data. So generative AI, this is obviously a big one at the minute. This is one of the reasons in the last probably year, 18 months, AI has gone from already being a big talking point to getting even more mainstream attention, and where a lot of people are starting to take note and try and understand where they can get the benefit of AI. This is all about generating new content, whether it's text, images, music. This could be not just generating, say, some ad copy for a new product. This could be doing it in the voice of your company. We do a lot of work in this space. One of the examples that we're working with at the minute is in training material. So we work with an organization who generate text documents for training courses. So, for example, a first aid course. The way that they previously worked was it would take them 3 weeks to write a new training course with all the associated to-ing and fro-ing from a customer who wants to use it, a bit of editing or rejigging and all that good stuff. What this allowed us to do was say, well, based on the thousands of documents that have already been written, how can we automate the legwork to let the people who were doing the writing focus on the brain work, on the stuff that the humans are still best at? So, for example, take the health and safety course example. If a construction company comes along and say, I want a health and safety course for my construction company, however, there are 3 people on it who are dyslexic, so it needs to cater to their needs as well. What would have been writing probably 2 versions to cater for those became, okay, putting into our solution the requirements of the course, hitting enter, and a first draft is generated for both versions. This turned what was 3 weeks of writing into 2 days of proofreading, still empowering those people to do the bits that humans do, but quicker, more effectively. So very, very quick overview there of some of the flavors and applications of AI, but where the magic really starts to happen is when you can start combining these. So again, going back to that manufacturer example, because that's probably what I know the best. Say a manufacturer wants to combine their technical documentation, the technical documentation of their suppliers, in order to empower their purchasing and sales team to ask better questions and answer questions more effectively. That would be one part of it. If on that same call, the client says, yes, I'm really interested, you've answered all my questions, when can I have it? Imagine then that AI platform can simulate through the factory floor, okay, based on this order being placed today, what's the lead time based on what's on the factory floor at the minute? That could then help the salesperson give that certainty to the client, who then might sign off. which then would automatically be planned into the shop floor and sent out there and scheduled in that way. At the same time, that same technical documentation could be used to inform a whole sales campaign, targeted all the right people, and also automatically written in a way in the voice of the company. Because we talk a lot at Razor about making people superhuman, and this is what it's all about. It's how can we take all the legwork out of it and empower people to do these things better. But you can see from end to end, using all these technologies, applying them in the right way. It's not just about picking one thing. It's how can we take this holistic view and really apply that strategic look from end to end and apply it in all the right places. So on top of all that, I was asked a few weeks ago what I thought the most exciting thing was about AI, based on talking about all those different applications. But for me, the most exciting part is how accessible this technology is now. You don't have to be a massive tech company over in California to make use of AI. You don't have to even to be a big company. It's accessible. The toolbox is there. You don't need a huge budget to get started. It's about finding where to start and taking that first step. And to me, that's the exciting bit. It's the stuff we can all do to make the most of this technology. It's very, very democratized in that way. So again, going back to Jamie's talk a few weeks ago, he pointed out how AI isn't a new thing. It's been around for decades, but why is it becoming so big? Other than, on one hand, generative AI being in the news and being a recent big development, AI really is coming of age. We have access to, whether it's through the cloud, being able to access huge amounts of compute power, storage, which 10, 15 years ago would have required a very big box, a very expensive big box to be put in the corner of a room, and that upfront investment would have prevented anyone accessing that kind of tech. Data is a lot more available, a lot more accessible. The tools are there to get it, label it, store it, look after it. There's a whole host of pre-trained models out there now. You're rarely starting from scratch with this tech. It's building on the shoulders, you're standing on the shoulders of giants to really hone in on your application and get started. Also with things like open source, you're not doing a big investment to get into this stuff. And companies like ourselves being able to come in and offer that real AI as a service, service to be able to get people started, fill in the gaps and sort of drive things along. Cool. So how do we take this opportunity? Let's talk about innovation and how we make the most of this tech. So what is innovation for a start? Because it's more than just doing something new. There's lots of different ways to do something new. You can't have innovation without identifying and delivering that real change that actually brings value as well in some form, or at least moves you closer to getting that value. It's about creating opportunities and being proactive rather than reactive to something that's happening. And while we've built a business, Razor, we built a company around enabling and delivering this innovation. I was actually looking for a much more profound innovation quote to put here, but actually, I think this one resonated with me the most. If you're going to build a time machine into a car, why not do it in some style? In the words of Emmett, aka Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Because especially with AI, it's the opportunity to experiment and innovate, but there's always that playful aspect. There's always that, how can we make this a bit more rock and roll? What can we, if we try that, if we put these two bits of technology together, what can we achieve? What does that look like? Because innovation can take a lot of forms. It can be incremental steps over a long period of time, and it will be, and that's an important part of it. But AI probably has the potential to be about as radical and as disruptive as you can get. So balancing that, step-by-step approach with seeing a problem and placing a few small bets on big odds also comes into it as well, and something to bear in mind. So what are the types of innovation? There's three types I want to talk about today that are particularly relevant when we're talking about AI. All relevant, but all equally as important in different ways. There's innovation from sort of pushing the boundaries of technology sense. There's innovation in the sense of innovating on processes, on what we're already doing. Then there's the opportunity to completely rethink how we can operate and look for the opportunities that AI enables that just were simply not possible 10, 5, or even at this point 2 years ago. It's how fast it's going. So pushing the boundaries of technology, we start with there. This is probably what most people think of when you first say innovation. It's asking the question, is this thing possible? And if it's possible, how do we achieve it? Now, we've got quite a diverse team here at Razor, and we have a lot of scientists, and we balance our, play with technology approach with also that scientific approach. And it always starts with asking a question. Start with a hypothesis. It's taking that hypothesis and then between a hypothesis based on value, on where we want to be in the future, but then between here and there, experimenting. Data and AI, more than a lot of projects, more than a lot of technologies, can be fickle, and it's sometimes working out what's possible. Do we have the right data? If we don't, how do we fill in the gaps? How do we make this work as well as possible? I'm sure when I think about a lot of stuff we do with pure software with our dev team, where there's a will, there's a way. Whereas with data and AI, it's finding how do we make this work? What's the best approach? Because it's science at the end of the day. And the first question is often when we're working with AI is, do we have the data that we need? This isn't just this can look in this takes a lot of different forms. It's having data that is the right data, but also enough of it. It's data that's good enough, clean enough, data that's relevant to the bit that we're looking at, data that's fresh enough. There's no point, you could build the best AI prediction model in the world, but if it predicts something that happened yesterday, it's not going to be that great. It's something that we come across an awful lot, where people come and say, we want to do some AI, and where we're starting from is one of those horrible Excel spreadsheets with a load of macros on that only one person knows how to use. And that might be the starting point. And sometimes it's about understanding what are the bits we've got to put in place first in order to make AI happen. Now, one of the things that we do at Razor is what we call a data assessment. Sometimes it's coming in, understanding from all those dimensions of data, where are we starting from? What do we need to do? What might that first step be? Now more than ever, I sort of mentioned earlier on that you can stand on the shoulder of giants. Sometimes it's picking the small slice of data that we do have, using more of the pre-trained models that we do have available and taking that first step and making the most of those out of the box options. But ultimately, it's all about the data. Garbage in, garbage out is something that you'll hear a lot, and it's how do we put those firm foundations in place to empower the stuff that comes later. In terms of practicalities, what this often looks like for us is what we call an innovation sprint. It's taking that hypothesis and experimenting. So there's a couple of specific examples here. On the left, there's some work we did with a startup called Ontaro. Now, the purpose of this was, how can we ensure that children stay safe online without invading their privacy, was the goal of this. It was asking the question, can we use AI to flag when a child is looking at something dangerous or harmful in the least invasive way possible? So we built an AI model based on their text, based on what they were looking at, that could flag up these issues, which started off as a small innovation sprint, which has now become a consumer application that you can go and download. We did the same thing in logistics to do with combining trains on a train network, using AI to look at a vast array of train schedules and looking for opportunities to save huge amounts of money by combining trains into one. And that was data that was available to humans, but goes back to that thing of, it just doesn't suit our way of thinking. We can't see patterns in that amount of data. So it's using computers to enable that and drive that way. But that all started with a hypothesis. Is this thing possible? Yes, it is. Okay, now that we're confident, now that we've addressed that risk, how do we turn this into something bigger? The next step then is reimagining processes. So it's looking directly at the way we do things and how can we do them better. Now, so again, I love technology. I'm a big believer in technology. I'm a technology optimist, but it's useless unless eventually it solves a problem. So you're equipped with your, you've seen this thing's possible, but then how do we apply this to a process? And I want to introduce a concept, something you may have come across before, but it's called the data information knowledge wisdom pyramid. It's relevant for data projects, it's relevant for AI projects, and it illustrates how to turn data into something useful, it's about adding context, putting it in the right people's hands. So if we take an example of data, a piece of data might be red light. So red light on its own is meaningless. There's nothing that you can do with that. If we add some context to it, we can turn it into information. So if I say to you, the traffic light on Sydney Street in Sheffield is red, suddenly we have something that you can picture. Even if you've not been here, you can understand that. It might not be relevant to you, but that's information. To turn it into knowledge, it's putting it in the right person's hands. So if I was to say I'm driving on Sydney Street, Sheffield, and the light has turned red, that is a piece of knowledge about me, my situation, which I can then use my wisdom. I need to put the brakes on to turn that into some action that I've used with that data. Because what happens when you don't think about this pyramid in any kind of innovation project related to a process is you encounter what I term the trough of disillusionment. You might have seen this curve before when Gartner talks about hype cycles of big technology, and it applies in big markets and with big trends, but it is just as relevant internally in a company when you're trying to roll out a new way of doing something with a process. What happens is, what this illustrates is, if you look on the up and down, is the hype, is the excitement of a project, and then time as we go across. So you start off excitement, you've proved a hypothesis, everyone's very excited, here we go. The hype goes up and up and up, everyone's excited. But as time goes on, there's nothing really to show for it. Nothing's changed, and that enthusiasm starts to wane. Then when you get to the bottom of that trough, that's the point where you're going to the CFO saying, we need a little bit more money to finish this. Or somebody's saying, oh, cool, can you show me what you've been doing? Because we really need this. Our value's not quite there yet. Give us a little bit longer. And that's when you get stuck. That's when the next flash thing comes along and people start innovating on that instead and write that thing off, even though in just a little bit more time, the value was going to come. So how do you overcome that? Well, it's all based on the fact that data is overrated. I, for a long time, had data in my job title. I still do, I think, actually. But it's overrated. On its own, it's not valuable. You can't do anything with it. You got to pay to store it. You got to pay to look after it. If you don't pay to maintain it, by the time you do come around to it, it might be in a mess, and you've got to spend a lot of time and effort getting it to a point. Now, what went wrong is you can go straight back to this pyramid, and this is why I brought it up. What happened in this situation, and what often happens, is people focus all their upfront effort on the bottom of a pyramid. Now, I get it. You can't have a pyramid without a base. However, by focusing on this level, it's very hard to get across tangible impact, tangible value. And this is where people's interest starts to wane, and you can't move on to those next bits because you've not proven value. The way to look at it is what is that line through the pyramid? What is that little bit of wisdom? What's that I need to put the brakes on, that AI, that data can enable, and what do I need to power that? Starting with that builds that firm foundation in terms of buy-in, in terms of momentum, in terms of proof that this technology is valuable, to then move on to more projects and do more, expand through the rest of the pyramid, bring more things in, and make more of an impact. Finding that little bit of wisdom, finding that strip is not always easy. It might take a bit of work. What I always say to people is start by imagining that the data, the wisdom, the AI that you're looking for is a person sat around the table with you. Imagine it is a CFO, it's a COO, but they know everything. If they were sat in a board meeting with you, if they were sat in any meeting with you, what questions would you be asking them? Because that's a clue to things that you're interested in. Those are the big things in your business. That start with that, and we know that we're going to make real action at the back of it, make real decisions and make an impact. Now, one of the ways that we go about this is with one of our products we call Data QI, which is a platform for building chatbots based on large language models, on custom trained large language models on your own data. Now, an example where we use this, using the mindset of that pyramid, is we work with a retailer who were looking for a way to empower their sales team with more technical information about their products. Now, if we were focusing on the data part of that pyramid on the base, we would have spent weeks going through all the different kinds of product they sold, collating all that data, training things, experimenting, building a huge platform, and it would have taken us an awful long time to get some value. What we did instead was find that, what was that wisdom? What was the bit that was going wrong? In their case, they were a company that they sold survival equipment. And the issue, one of their biggest sellers was around life jackets for boats. Now, life jackets were a lot more complicated than I thought they'd be, and they have different features and different characteristics depending on what you're selling. So starting with that wisdom of, okay, well, if we can start by helping the sales team know more about life jackets and answer those questions, that's something we can focus our effort on and deliver value quite quickly in a very tangible way that gets that team going. This is great. I can see how this is empowering me. Because this all goes back to that, again, from Jamie's talk, bringing people along. Do they feel threatened by AI? But seeing how it's making them do their job better helps you build that firm foundation to do more things, innovate more, bring more things into that solution. But at least you're delivering that value step by step by step and improving processes. So that final type of innovation then. So it's not always just about doing tech. It's not always just about improving the processes we're doing. So I am an engineer by background. One of the things I was taught was the worst thing that an engineer can do is optimize something that just shouldn't exist in the first place. I think that's right in some. There's an element of truth to that. However, at the same time, obviously there's value of the journey and making yourself better now with the long term in mind. But this is where we really start thinking about pioneering that future. What could that future look like? How can we create value in entirely new ways? How can we replace our processes entirely with better ways of doing things, which we're now enabled to do by where technology is? It's about turning AI into just not an operational tool, but also a complete strategic asset in your business. I think one of the best ways of illustrating this is with this example with Airbnb. Because Airbnb are a company that, in terms of they use data and AI technology not just to reimagine an existing business, they completely rethought an industry in ways that wouldn't have been possible without this technology. So there's a few different avenues you can take when thinking about how to do this, business differently with AI. I think Airbnb illustrates each one really nicely. So first one, new products and services. So AI can unlock completely new ways to serve your customers. In the case of Airbnb, as I said before, it enabled a whole new business model. So from starting in their bedroom in 2008 to growing to almost $100 billion market capitalization at one point. Now, it might not be obvious what the link is, but instead of seeing Airbnb as a hotel or accommodation business, I mean, they don't own any hotels, they don't own any accommodation. Airbnb are the purest form of what I said before about every business being a data business. Airbnb have found a slot between two networks, a network of people who are looking for a place to stay in a new city, and a network of people who have spare rooms, an empty apartment that they're trying to fill. Now, these two networks, this is what's called network effects. We've actually got a white paper on the website with more information on this. But that's sort of the ultimate data problem. You've got two huge networks here with nodes that have preferences, needs, all kinds of data enriched from different areas. And Airbnb have found their niche in the middle of this to connect these two networks and build a whole new business model around it. And AI has to be at the heart of that. There's just too much to do manually, whether it's recommending a customer accommodation based on their needs and their behaviors and people similar to them, all the way to doing completely dynamic pricing based on what's happening in that city that weekend, based on what the people are doing and the kind of accommodation that's being booked up. They're able to draw these parallels and make those connections using data and AI. And not only is it enhancing processes, it's that thing about it replacing them entirely. So on the face of it, Airbnb, they might have had a process for manually checking photos to ensure that they match the description of the property that's being advertised. Now, on the face of it, that is a hugely time-consuming problem, but a very important one when it's based around a platform that's foundation is trust, knowing the people knowing that what they're seeing and what they're signing up for is what they're getting. Now, Airbnb have automated this with AI using computer vision, analyzing what's in the images and making sure that's what's as advertised. But they even go as far as quantifying the attractiveness of properties because they know this is for the right customer, for the right person looking for a property. That's something that is as important as how close it is to the town centre, or does it have air conditioning? Knowing that somewhere they're going is, I believe, what the kids call Instagrammable. So all this, it's not just making processes better, it's all unique IP for a business. It's all this proprietary technology that doesn't just make you better, it can make you more valuable as a business as well. So it's looking for where can we throw out these processes and do things entirely differently. And finally, we talked before about customer using that customer data, whether it's through marketing or sales, but it's also helping the customer with more insight. We can use AI to understand the customer, but we can also use AI to help the customer understand us and help that process. Whether this is through, as Airbnb do, through customer service chatbots that help improve the response time of the humans and what the people need to speak to sometimes because they're triaging things better, but also going as far as fraud detection. The best way of eroding trust, if I was an Airbnb, if I had a property, would be dealing with a bunch of people scamming me, showing up, trashing my house, using it for all kinds of things. Whereas being able to use AI to do this fraud detection and detecting all these issues up front helps improve that trust and makes basically the platform possible and makes that whole business model possible. So I went quite big there with the Airbnb example, but at the same time, this is accessible, this is possible. And it's sometimes just taking that next step, sometimes that first step in how to make the most of this stuff, whether it's from that business level or from the process level. And one of the ways that we go about this is with an AI assessment. AI needs a strategy, and more often than not, strategy needs AI. This is where it is. But you can't do a strategy without knowing where you're starting from. You can't draw a line between point A and point B if point A could be just about anywhere. So one of the things that we do is we can come in and we can understand where you're starting from an AI perspective. This isn't just technology. This is looking at skills. This is looking at strategy. This is looking at the governance processes in place, all the infrastructure that's in place. What you'd be left with is not just a vision for the future, not just a starting point, but also based on what we understand, what we know about where you are and where you're going. Here are 8 things that you could do tomorrow that will get you closer. And here are the things that are the easiest to implement and also make the most impact. So even though it can feel big, thinking about that Airbnb context, it's all about taking that first step, and this is a great way of doing that. So thank you very much for listening over that time. We talked about how AI isn't just about looking far into the future. There's stuff we need to be doing now. There's a huge amount of ways to apply it, to apply AI, lots of levers to pull, but the magic really happens when you bring all those together, combine them, build on top of each other. It's also not just about innovating, we're playing with the latest tech. It's how can we innovate from a process point of view? How can we operate? How can we innovate from a business point of view? But it's all about starting small, starting focused, and starting thinking about that wisdom that we need. So I know there's going to be some time for questions, but just to finish, we've got a few more QR codes here. Hopefully people are holding their phones up to these ones as well. You can look at some of the, I think Fraser's doing a talk, I think it's in a couple of weeks' time, on the application of AI at an enterprise level. So taking that next step to scaling it taking that innovation and really taking it to that next level. There is some more information on the AI readiness. I think it's a great first step, or even just have a first conversation around. And there's also some initial, some other research and some other content we've done there around the practicalities around prompt engineering, which is obviously a huge field in that large language model, generative AI area. So thank you very much. I think there's some questions, Adam. I see you've come back in.
Yeah, there's nothing in the Q&A section yet, everybody, but if we just give a couple of minutes now just to field any potential questions. We had quite a few in our last session that came into the last minute, so
I explained it too well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was too clear, Patrick. Yeah, too clear. Yeah.